Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you most cordially to the birthplace of George Frederic Handel and invite you to make a short tour of our exhibition in which you will find information about his life and work illustrated with musical examples. George Frederic Handel was born in the home of his parents, the present Handel House, on the 23rd of February 1685, and on the next day was baptized in the church on the marketplace. When the young Handel entered his name on the roll of Halle University in February 1702, music continued to be his interest. It was only a few weeks later that he took over the post of organist at the church which subsequently became the cathedral in Halle. In 1703, the hopeful young musician left Halle. His travels led him via Hamburg, Italy and Hanover, eventually to London, where he spent the greater part of his life. In 1703, Handel arrived in Hamburg. At first, Handel was engaged as a violinist and harpsichordist in the orchestra. Eventually, he composed 4 German operas. The first of these, Almira, brought him his first success on stage. After a stay of about 3 years in Hamburg, Handel went to Italy. In this room, we see maps and views of some of the cities where Handel stayed. Handel's stay of nearly 4 years in Italy was crowned with the resounding success of his opera Agrippina in Venice. It's from this time that we have the earliest known authentic portrait of Handel. In the spring of 1710, Handel left Italy and took over the position of musical director at the Hanoverian court of Georg Ludwig. Presumably, from the very beginning, he regarded Hanover as an intermediate stop. Perhaps he also speculated that the Elector Georg Ludwig of Hanover, being next in line to the English throne, might help him gain a footing in London. The production of his opera Rinaldo at the Queen's Theatre in London's Haymarket was a sensation. In the late autumn of 1712, Handel went to London again to take up what became permanent residence there. At the time, England was the most advanced country in the world and offered particularly favourable conditions for Handel's personal and artistic development. After the death of Queen Anne in 1714, Georg Ludwig of Hanover was, as expected, proclaimed King of England. His imposing portrait as George I, painted by the English court painter Godfrey Kneller, is to be seen on the wall opposite the entrance. Opposite the windows, you see a large copy of a portrait by Philip Mercier showing Handel in about 1730 at the age of 45. For the first 25 years in London, George Frederic Handel concentrated his main efforts on Italian opera. In the winter of 1718 to 19, the Royal Academy of Music, a joint stock undertaking for the promotion of Italian opera, had been founded. The predictable but nevertheless abrupt end of the first Academy was also accelerated by the extraordinary successful performance of The Beggar's Opera by John Gay and Johann Christoph Pepusch. By increasing his efforts, composing and performing odes and oratorios after 1739, he produced a more favourable audience reaction. In this room, Handel's second creative phase in London is represented. This was mainly dedicated to composing the great English oratorios. In his own lifetime, Handel achieved great fame in London. After his death, his works were performed again and again, and in the year 1784, the homage paid to him attained its first great climax, when the 100th anniversary of his birth was celebrated, although it was a year too early. In the 1920s, the Handel Opera Festival in Göttingen gave a new impetus to the performances of Handel's music in Germany. It stimulated similar activities in Halle too, where a Handel opera was performed 2 years later. After World War II, there were strong efforts to continue Handel activities in Halle. In 1948, a musical museum was founded in the house of Handel's birth, and in the same year, Handeltage, Handel Days, were inaugurated here, which were the beginning of a new series of annual Handel festivals from 1952 onwards. And we will conclude our short Handel exhibition tour by listening to the celebrated Hallelujah chorus from the Messiah.